Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Justin and today I want to talk about Alibaba. And frankly, I am a Baba bag holder. I've been holding Alibaba stock for about 18 months now. Now, I did sell a small portion of my Alibaba stock back in December, and that's where I invested into Tencent and also Prosus, which both of those haven't done all that well either. So go figure. But I haven't talked about Alibaba on my channel for quite a while. In fact, I went back, and the last time I talked about Alibaba was back in March. So about 5 months ago, but I still hold the stock. I still have a good portion of my portfolio in Alibaba. I just stopped talking about them because I just felt it was just so overblown on YouTube. It seemed like so many people were reporting on Alibaba. I just kind of just stayed away from it. But they're reporting earnings this week. In fact, they report earnings on August 4th, which is Thursday. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about Alibaba. What has happened since March? In fact, there's some news this past week. And has the investing thesis changed from my point of view? And what do I expect from earnings coming up here this week? So we're going to talk about all that in this video. If this is the first time you've watched a video of mine, my name is Justin. I've been in accounting for about 20 years now, and I just love investing. I love analyzing companies, and I just try to bring you guys value on what I find and just kind of my opinion on the stock market and stocks. So hopefully you get some value out of this. If you do, smash that thumbs up button, and let's just get right into this. So let's talk about the first news just here in the past week, and that is on July 29th, the SEC put Alibaba on the potential delisting list. And it's kind of laughable because the stock has dropped almost 15 to 20% in the last week and a half. And a good piece of that drop is because it landed on that list. But that should not be new news to anybody. The SEC came out with this they passed a law that they can actually put companies on this list that do not adhere to SEC guidelines, that do not have SEC approved auditors that follow GAAP accounting. And unfortunately, Alibaba can't allow foreign auditors to come in and view their books because the CCP does not allow it. The CCP is concerned about privacy and other things, especially around tech companies like Alibaba. So they do not allow foreign auditors to come and audit books. Now, Alibaba, I believe, has PricewaterhouseCoopers audit their books, but it's not, the segment or the division that is here in the United States. They actually have a hub in Hong Kong that actually audits the books, but they don't allow foreigners to review their books. So there's been a lot of investors that have been burned by Chinese companies like Luckin Coffee, for example. So the SEC is trying to protect investors, and Alibaba landed on this list. It's not Alibaba's fault. They're not the ones making these rules. The CCP is. So the thing here is that Alibaba, the worst case scenario is that they get delisted in 3 years. So basically, you hit that list. It's 3 years to get compliant. If you don't get compliant, you get delisted. So what did Alibaba do? Well, they came out in the past week and that they announced they're going to apply for a dual primary listing on the Hong Kong exchange. So they're obviously on the American Stock Exchange on ticker symbol BABA. They're also going to do a primary listing on the Hong Kong exchange. Now, you might ask, but they're already on the Hong Kong exchange. That is true, but it's a secondary exchange. In order to get a primary listing on Hong Kong, there's 4 different criteria that companies have to meet. So it's more difficult to get on there, where if you're a secondary exchange, you only need to meet 1 criteria. So Alibaba's got to go through with that. They're going to try to get onto the Hong Kong exchange as another primary listing, which I don't think that's going to be a problem. We'll see. But a couple of things also will tailor or spin off from that is that gives more investors, especially in mainland China, to invest in Alibaba. So the thought is, or the hope is, that the stock might get a bump. Even the stock here in the United States, ticker symbol BA, may get an uptick because of that. So we'll have to see if that's going to happen. So what management Alibaba is doing is trying to protect themselves by allowing them, be listed as a primary exchange on Hong Kong in case their shares get delisted on the American Stock Exchange. People can just invest there. Plus, they're going to have more investors that have access to the Alibaba shares in Hong Kong. Now, something to note as well is the CCP doesn't want to prohibit all foreign auditors to look at all Chinese books. They basically are trying to compromise with the US SEC by saying, hey, let's divide our companies into like three different categories. So number one would be non-sensitive, second would be sensitive, and then the third one would be secret data. So I'm assuming that they probably would allow foreign auditors to audit the books of, say, non-sensitive type companies. I don't know what that would be, on top of my head, but the other two categories, they would not allow US SEC auditors to come in there and audit. So I don't think that's going to pass for the SEC. I don't think they're going to be okay with that because, what if a CCP just makes 95% of their companies on the sensitive or secret data list? That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense with that. But they've somewhat tried to, compromise, I guess, from that standpoint. Now, let's take a look at financials for Alibaba, because that is something that I would say has deteriorated and could be of concern. So, if we take a look at the last 2 quarters, for example, for revenue specifically, growth has only been 9.7% and 8.9% respectively over the last 2 quarters. Keep in mind, this company was from a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR rate, was about 40% per year. So they were growing astronomically, and this is a huge company, so impressive growth, and it has really fallen back below 10% each of the last 2 quarters. So, that is of concern. Not only that, but operating margins as well have dropped to about 13% and then 9% the last 2 quarters. And even look at towards the top line of the P&L, the gross margins have dropped as well, ending up around 32% versus where they've been at historically around 40%. So you're talking revenues dropping, gross margins are dropping, operating margins are dropping, and then net income, they had a loss of $3 billion last quarter, and that's US dollars. Now, keep in mind, a lot of that had to do with loss on investments and not the actual operating business, but still bad overall. So what do I expect in the next quarter? Well, let's talk about a couple of things. So revenue, I think, will probably be around $30 billion. I think it's going to be fairly flat from the last quarter, which, we haven't really seen Alibaba have a drop in revenue quarter over quarter. And so that'll be a pretty big deal. Now, we just saw Meta actually drop for the first time ever. So I could see Alibaba dropping as well. It's been very difficult for the Chinese economy because of all the zero COVID policy that they've had. So they've had to shut down certain parts of China and open them. And that has hurt Alibaba and some of the other companies there as well. So I think around 30 billion. Now, if they end up falling below, say around like 29.5 billion or less for revenue, I think that's a bad quarter from a revenue standpoint. If they can get, over say 31 billion for revenue, I think that's a pretty decent quarter. So I think it's going to be pretty much flat just because of all the stuff going on in their economy. And we'll just kind of see where that falls out. And as far as earnings per share goes, I think it's going to fall around $1.50 per share. So I think if it's below, say $1.40, it's going to be a bad quarter. If it's above $1.60, I think that's a good quarter, and I'll be pretty happy with that. So we'll kind of see how it falls out, but I do want to see, margins being closer to that 40%. As far as operating margins go, I'd love to see gross margins being in that 35% or higher range. We'll kind of see how it plays out, but that's kind of my thoughts there. All right, so what are my overall thoughts about Alibaba? Has the story changed? Am I thinking about potentially selling the stock? Well, I still think it's one of the best businesses in the entire world. You're talking about a company, they always say it's the Amazon of China. It's not really the Amazon of China. JD.com is more like, I would say, Amazon. Alibaba has over 8 billion consumers worldwide. In fact, their international business, grew over 20% last quarter. So I expect them to continue to grow at a high rate internationally compared to what they are, internally in China. But it's still a wonderful business. Their cloud business is the X factor. I've talked about that before. There's huge margins in that business. If you look at AWS for Amazon, you're talking, between 30 and 40% operating margins. That is absolutely incredible. And right now, Alibaba owns around 38% of the cloud business. They should be able to control about a third of that business going out into the future. In fact, the total addressable market, according to Alibaba, for the cloud business just in a few years is $150 billion US dollars. So that is absolutely massive. And so as long as they can continue growing their cloud business, they should do really well. It should improve their operating margins overall and just be more profitable as a business. At the same time, though, I don't want to ignore the financials and the deterioration of the financials that we've seen over the last 2 quarters. Now, I do think, the pandemic, or after the pandemic and the COVID stuff that's been going on with the shutdowns, the zero policy they've been dealing with, has impacted that quite a bit. GDP for China among the rest of the world is supposed to fall this quarter and going into the future for a while. So I just don't think a lot of these big tech companies are going to grow. We're probably going to see a decrease, just like we've seen in the United States, seeing decreases on the top line and bottom line of a lot of companies. I think we're going to see that with Alibaba as well. I think really the biggest concern I have right now is the whole delisting piece. And really, it's not a huge issue overall, but for me, it's one of those things. If I just want to solve the issue, I can just invest in the Hong Kong exchange, and that's actually something I might be doing. I'm going to start looking at, potentially moving my shares over there. I've not decided if I'm going to, do that or not. Maybe I'll do a portion of it. I'm not sure yet, but with them actually making that primary listing on the Hong Kong exchange, it makes me wonder if I should start going that direction right now. I do invest with Charles Schwab, and so I would have to apply for being able to invest in foreign companies. I'm sure it's probably not difficult to apply for that, but I might go that direction, just kind of see and kind of ponder if that's the right thing to do or not. But overall, I don't think my investing thesis has changed very much. Now, I do think in the short term, the growth isn't going to be as good, but long term, I still think this is a great company at a margin of safety. But I may be a bag holder for another 18 months. We'll just kind of see how this things plays out. But I still am bullish on the company long term. But I am just might moving my shares over to Hong Kong. We'll just kind of see how that goes. But I love to hear from you guys. I mean, are you still bullish on Alibaba? Are you staying away from Alibaba? What about the other Chinese companies, say like Tencent, JD.com? What do you think about those type of companies and kind of where the market is right now? I'd love to hear from you guys. Also, if you're interested, I do have a Patreon where you get access to my Discord channel where I have other value investors on there. We talk about stocks and just kind of bounce ideas off each other. You also get access to my full Patreon page where I post specific videos on there. Also, you get access to my valuation templates as well. So if you're interested, I'll put a link down below. Go check that out. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you on the other side. Take care and God bless.